This.
Oh, I can't believe you're showing this.
So this is a meeting after when the crisis all happened, the Vice article, the church's denouncement, Glenn Beck, Blaze TV, publishing stuff. When the crisis was happening at the same time as the draft press releases were being written, this is a spreadsheet of meetings that were happening basically the next day or the coming days with the topics that they needed to cover. And there's a lot to go over on this. Okay, so starting at 8 a.m., Vice Church denounces Tim. Internal sources at the church guess.
So they know that this was coming on that day? Like, that's when that article is going to be released, basically?
It had been released at this point. And so that's the problem there. Addressing Vice Church denounces Tim. That was released publicly. Tim didn't see this coming. Tim was on the American Covenant tour. I know exactly where he was because I set that tour up. He was in Plymouth at this big statue that's just up from Plymouth Rock. And on the American Covenant tour, that was my tour that I created when he found out that the church denounced him. And he immediately he told everybody to turn on their phones and say, record this. And he's like, nothing that you hear is true. Nothing that you hear is true. It's all false.
Yeah.
He was in absolute complete denial. So you can watch that video. He's in his skinny jeans at that statue.
Skinny sweats. He likes to be comfortable and eat a lot at Plymouth.
This is the crisis meeting after that happened. Vice Church denounces Tim. Internal sources at the church guess at Doug Anderson. They're calling, trying to figure out who is this. They don't believe that's true. Then column D, next one over that, Catherine calls Elder Ballard and he answers the exact date and time. The sequence of events that happened in this. So looking at 9 a.m., column C, internal source confirms that it probably was MRB's office, but not M. Russell Ballard himself. Now, confirming that M. Russell Ballard's office issued that statement is a really big deal because M. Russell Ballard's office doesn't do anything without the approval of M. Russell Ballard. I've been to his office. I have spoken with his secretary. His secretary makes everything that he does work. She is implying that M. Russell Ballard's office, his secretary or his personal assistants, issued this statement without his approval, without his knowledge. Like, that doesn't add up. That's not how the church functions. That's not how it works.
Mm-hmm.
Then at 10 a.m., guess who he calls?
Thom Harrison, which if you're not up to date on who Thomas Harrison is, you're going to have to either go back and watch the other podcast I can link below that me and Ryan discuss blessings from Thom Harrison in detail, so you can be up to date on his visions of glory and the connections with a lot of Mormon doomsdayers. But Thom Harrison is a very thought to be a very prophetic guy who's like a mentor to Tim Ballard. So he's immediately
also a mentor to who? Chad
and Lori Daybell. I feel like they're in prison for murdering a bunch of people right now. I feel like Tim is also in a similar state with Thom Harrison as their mentor. So
So he gets on a call with Thom Harrison, who I'm calling the other prophet in Tim's life.
Mm-hmm.
They also know that Tim's stake president was released today. Matthew and Deaver. Psychic is the biggest problem, internal church optics. Now, what they're saying here is that they've spoken to the church and the message was relayed to them that the church is most concerned with the optics of the psychic, Janet Russin being Elder Ballard's personal psychic in the church.
Wait. Was this before or after the women had come out to say that Tim Ballard had like sexually assaulted them in the couple's ruse?
After. Yeah. Apparently that the church wasn't concerned. I'm sure they were concerned, but the sexual assaults were already, the accusations had been made. But the biggest problem that the church was concerned about according to this document. And what the people that were there was they were more concerned with the optics of the psychic Janet Russin.
Wow. I have no words. I have no words. I mean, I am a girl who has some things to say about how this church has let me down, but goodness, that is heartbreaking that the worst optics are about a psychic and not about
now. If that's not true,
sexual assaults,
then
please tell me it's not true. I would love for that not to be true.
Oh gosh. I would love to have lunch with Doug Anderson. I'm probably making his life really annoying right now, and I'm not trying to embarrass the church. I'm not calling anybody out. I'm laying the foundation for why Tim became who he is and the people that are involved. And I'm not saying that the church in any way, shape, or form is responsible for Tim committing sexual assaults against the women, but there is a collective blame that I'm part of, that everybody who platformed Tim is part of, a collective responsibility, I should say, for at the very least acknowledging the harms that have happened. And we platform this guy, we can de-platform this guy also. And we're going to get into a little bit more about that. But moving on to this, there's also multiple calls on here, Tom with Tim. And then at the end, there's also on the media agenda, the church court for Tim and Catherine. And I don't think we need to go into that and what that means and what that looks like. That's their personal life, and I'll leave analysis out of that. So other people on this are Eric Mustos, Paul Hutchinson's mentioned. It's kind of like John, Tim, and Brad Bauer. Brad Bauer won't pick up. Call him F. That's really interesting because Brad Bauer is Elder Ballard's son-in-law, who was running the slave stealers as well as Liberty 89 for Tim. And we're going to get into Brad Ballard's relationship. He's not picking up.
That's Elder Ballard's son-in-law, who's directly connected with all of these business dealings with Tim Ballard. So Tim is freaking out, saying, where did this come from within the office? Who is saying these things? Where's this denouncement coming from? He's not really getting any answers, it looks like. So, but it does say so, because it does say that Catherine calls Elder Ballard and he answers, but we don't really know what the details of that phone call.
Well, according to Catherine, Elder Ballard said, I had no idea what this statement's all about, which is why we need the church to provide some answers. Like, fill us in on the rest of the story on what happened here. Please.
And like this document claims that like the information that they could gather when they're running around like a chicken with its head cut off, saying like, what the freak just happened to us? Like, our main prophet has just been denounced by the church where so much of our accolades and funding come from. So the internal source confirms that it's probably his office, the office of Elder Ballard, but not Elder Ballard himself. And then that's corroborated maybe with Catherine, that she calls Elder Ballard and he doesn't know where it's coming from. But Brad Bauer is probably just trying to stay out of it and lie low and not also give them any answers, as he's probably needing to cut ties and go a separate way and align himself with his father and with the church, and denounced him as well, and probably doesn't want to have a conversation about it. Yeah. So yeah. And then before that, I also wanted to mention strategizing. Deaver strategizes, says Catherine and Tim shouldn't speak. I always think that's the right answer. They shouldn't speak.
There's more to the story, because leaving it up to the imaginations and speculation of people, it's going to go wild places that probably aren't true, but are also very damaging to everybody involved. But there's enough people on the inside that know the truth, that if we come together and share what we know, we can understand what happened, how it developed. And it's one of those things where I know this friend of mine who works in human trafficking, who was part of OUR at the beginning, this morning I was talking to, he's like, it's a really hard thing to admit that you're involved with him, that you supported, that platformed him, whatever. But then also that you saw red flags and did nothing. that's a tough position to be in. And Tim caused so much chaos. He ran things off the rails so bad, so quickly, in that everybody is like, what do we do now? We're a part of the story. What do we do now? I think the only thing to do now is to tell the story, obviously admit that we were wrong in supporting this guy, and at the very least support and try and undo the harm by supporting the people that have really been victimized the worst. And that's not Glenn Beck and not Tony Robbins or myself or anybody.
Mm-hmm.
It's really
it's a great point.
It's the women. Tune in next time to the Timmy Did.
Wait a second. Timmy did. No, not. There's no way Timmy did. What?
Podcast.